So Cardano has seen some monstrous growth in recent years by making itself the most suitable blockchain for large institutions like governments and Fortune 500 companies. But these large institutions are betting on another blockchain for the same niche that is technologically comparable to Cardano and more suitable for their needs. This should have Cardano investors very worried, but also excite anybody that wants a potentially huge investment opportunity. The blockchain in question is Algorand, and it is severely undervalued, giving it potential for 50x growth. This isn't going to be a comparison video between these blockchains, but they are competing for the same market. So I'll highlight the key differences that separate them and discuss what will happen to Cardano once we have gone through Algorand's ecosystem. So we're going to cover what Algorand is, why its development team is truly remarkable, and the bullish activities that the ecosystem has been up to. Then we'll put it all together and see what the future price growth potential of Algorand and Cardano will be. Believe me when I say you will not want to miss this video. Without further ado, let's get into it and go through what Algorand is and how does it work. Algorand is a layer 1 smart contract compatible blockchain that aims to be the primary choice for all blockchain activities, from DeFi to official IDs and intellectual property management. It was founded by Silvio Micali, who is a highly regarded MIT professor that has received the Turing Award for his work in computer science. This award is seen as the Nobel Prize in the computer science field. The Algorand blockchain is being developed by Algorand Incorporated and overseen by the Algorand Foundation, which has some remarkable board members, but we'll come back to that shortly. The Algorand blockchain utilizes a brand new consensus algorithm called pure proof of stake, and the network is made up of participation nodes and relay nodes. Anyone can be a participation node, but the Algorand Foundation decides who is a relay node. A little centralized for my liking, but they claim to be researching how to make this process decentralized. I still don't know if I like this though. Anyways, let's briefly walk through how a transaction is recorded on the Algorand blockchain so that we can see the strengths and weaknesses of the system. Let's say we've got Alice and Bob sending money to each other. Step 1. Alice sends Bob 1 algo. This transaction is submitted to a participation node. Step 2. This transaction is propagated across the whole network of participation nodes through the relay nodes. A lottery of sorts called a VRF is conducted to select a participation node, with the amount of staked algo dictating the likelihood of winning. Step 3. Once this node is selected, a group of transactions assigned to it are picked to make up the next block. The proof of the node's VRF lottery win is also included. Step 4. Once this proposed block is propagated to the network, another VRF takes place to select a verifying committee of participation nodes who vote on whether or not to verify the block. Voting power is determined by the amount of staked algo once more. The votes are counted by the network, and once a supermajority of the votes are received, the block moves to the certifying stage. Step 5. Almost identical to the previous step, a VRF is held to establish a certifying committee which votes whether or not to mint the block to the blockchain. Once a supermajority of these votes have been received, the block is minted on the blockchain or rejected. This is a very brief overview of how transactions are processed, but it does highlight the network's reliance on relay nodes, which is concerning given the centralized control over who becomes a relay node. Not to mention, those controlling the relay nodes can also create participation nodes and control a large chunk of the system. This could lead to some serious centralized control of the ecosystem. However, in general, this is a good system that balances speed and data verification with a claimed 6,000 TPS and an almost instant transaction finality. The issues I have raised seem to be getting addressed, but they will remain a concern for me until they are actually resolved. In terms of tokenomics, the blockchain's native currency is Algo, and there is a max supply of 10 billion, with 7.3 billion in circulation. The rest will be emitted routinely until 2030 with a reasonable distribution between all parties involved. Staking rewards are provided for participation nodes, and governance rewards are awarded to those who lock up their algo for 3-month periods in order to participate in blockchain governance votes. Relay nodes don't appear to receive any automated rewards. Instead, they're being paid out grants directly from the Algorand Foundation. This is a really concerning way to do it, but this is being addressed as well. Finally, it's important to note that Algorand has a strong push towards being carbon neutral in the near future and already scores quite highly on ESG. As we will soon discuss, big institutions are investing into Algorand, and ESG is one of the key factors they take into consideration when investing. So scoring highly on this will dramatically help the potential adoption, but we'll come back to this shortly. Now let's talk about the aspect of Algorand that will see it take a huge chunk of Cardano's market share, its development team. Let's start with the founder, Silvio Micali. We've already covered the basics: MIT professor, Turing Award, but he also has various PhDs and degrees in computer science, math, and cryptography. A really important detail about Silvio is that he was a collaborator for the Digital Currency Initiative, or DCI for short. While the DCI and digital currency projects are controversial, it's hard to see past how Silvio has essentially tailored Algorand to central banks' wants and needs before they were made public. It's almost like he had some inside knowledge about what they wanted. We'll talk about this more in just a minute, but first, let's talk about other board members that are even more connected to big money than Silvio is, like the CFO of the Algorand Foundation, Harpal Singh. Harpal Singh seems to be a straight up big money accountant that has spent a lot of his career around some of the dirty money capitals of the world. He was the manager of the auditing team at the PwC Cayman Islands office. Yes, the Cayman Islands, everyone jokes, is just a tax haven for wealthy people that don't like audits. He was also the CFO for Algorand, a huge independent asset management company similar to BlackRock, except smaller and with like 80% of its offices in tax havens. Now, given that Algorand is independent, there would be regular communication between the C-suite board members like Harpal and the very rich investors that put money into the organization. I cannot stress enough just how much money Harpal might be connected to that could be directed into Algorand, but we can only speculate in this one given the private nature of Algorand. Last one up is a seemingly random member of the Algorand Foundation, Ryan Khalil. This guy is straight up connected to Saudi Arabian money through his participation in the Arab Esports Federation, which is a Saudi Arabian government initiative. Given that the Saudi government has been known to throw billions around like it's nothing, having a pretty direct connection to catch some of those billions could see huge investment into the Algorand blockchain. Now, we can already see the results of these connections through Algorand's partnerships with large institutions. So let's take a look at these partnerships as well as some related news events. So this is where we'll really start to see the connections from the Algorand team start to take effect, as the biggest institutions of the world, such as governments and Fortune 500 companies, are directly connected to Algorand. We can see this first with the deep partnership between Circle and Algorand. For those that don't know, Circle's USDC is quietly becoming the de facto CBDC for the Federal Reserve and potentially the world, but that's a topic for another video. Anyways, Circle has implemented what is essentially a banking service for large clients that allows them to transfer their traditional currency into digital currency in an almost frictionless manner through their business accounts. This is bullish for Algorand, as it seems to slowly be becoming the blockchain of choice for the Circle transactions, as proven with the spikes in USDC activity on the Algorand blockchain when the initial integration happened, and when stake proofs were added to Algorand. I honestly believe this Circle partnership to be a sleeping giant in terms of activity on the Algorand blockchain, and by extension demand for the Algo coin. The next big partnership announced is with FIFA. FIFA and Algorand have commenced a technical partnership, with their first project together being an NFT project called FIFA Plus Collect. Doesn't really roll off the tongue, but anyways. FIFA Plus will be built on the Algorand blockchain and will essentially be a trading platform for things like game clips, photos, and other digital assets. Think something like old baseball cards, except like digital, I suppose. The pair have said that this is only their first foray into digital assets together, and they plan to go a lot further down the rabbit hole together. Now, with the FIFA video games, viewership, and merch sales are anything to go by, this platform will be huge in the next NFT boom. Especially since it's not just drawings of random monkeys or animals or, I don't know, NFTs. These are things people will actually want to own and will quickly become a collector's dream. So network activity and therefore demand for Algo will be crazy. There are too many variables to accurately predict the demand impact of this, but I expect this, plus the next partnership I mentioned, to turn Algorand into the go-to chain for the next NFT boom. Next up, we have the Nigerian government partnering with Algorand to launch an NFT platform for its citizens, which will allow for intellectual property management for everything from music and arts to patents and trademarks. Considering Nigeria is ranked 11th in the world for crypto adoption and is on track to become the third largest country by population in the world, this will be a massive demand driver for the Algo coin in the near future. Now, this last partnership is going to sound obscure, but it's the main link to governments and central banks, so hear me out. Algorand is partnering with multiple universities around the world. Just like how governments turn to universities for technical advice when the internet first started becoming a thing, they're turning to universities now as crypto is becoming a thing. Algorand has partnered with all the big universities that governments across the world are turning to, such as MIT, Melbourne University, Oxford University, and many others. This is placing Algorand as the go-to blockchain for these universities, which are advising governments and central banks about the adoption of blockchain technology and on their implementation of CBDCs. This is placing the Algorand blockchain in a position where it could be hosting all sorts of government services for governments across the world and by extension for billions of people. This would be bullish for Algorand as demand for the Algo coin would be enormous, and it all starts with these partnerships to universities. This isn't even considering the DCI connection through Silvio, which connects Algorand directly to the biggest central banks in the world. It's also important to note that these partnerships are seeing some serious money get behind Algorand. The foundation could potentially have over $1 billion of capital currently behind them. Anyways, with all these bullish aspects of Algorand, you might be asking yourself why it hasn't skyrocketed to be a top 10 cryptocurrency yet. Let's briefly talk about why this is. The first reason is that Algorand has been focusing on development that attracts large institutions over development that attracts current DeFi users. For example, Algorand recently made itself quantum resistant, which many current users of DeFi don't really care about, but banks and governments across the world have really taken notice of this. This will be a significant factor when it comes to banks and governments' decision-making process about which blockchain to use. However, the things that DeFi users care about, such as NFT support, cross-chain interoperability, and oracles, have all been lower on Algorand's development priority list, and thus were not implemented until very recently. As a result, the blockchain wasn't appealing to DeFi users in the previous bull run, but now that all this functionality has been built in, Algorand will be well equipped for the next bull run. The second reason, demand was stifled in the last bull run because of the vesting schedule. Algorand implemented an adjustable release mechanism to stop algo whales dumping their bags when their vesting schedule allowed them to. Basically, when the price of algo started to get too high in the last bull run, the Algo Foundation would automatically flood the market with more algo to drive the price down. This was done throughout pretty much the whole last bull run, minimizing price growth. This mechanism has now been retired and won't be happening in the next bull run, as the foundation has essentially run out of the funds to be able to do this. The reason this was implemented was to keep the ecosystem stable and appealing to large institutions, because if it had a price chart that looked like Dogecoin, well, it wouldn't be a good look for central bank investment. Now that we understand what Algorand is, how it works, and the bullish aspects of the ecosystem, let's take a look at why it's going to give Cardano a run for its money, and see if we can form a price prediction for Algo in the process. Let's be upfront. Both of these projects are highly capable blockchains with cutting-edge technology that will facilitate the implementation of blockchain technology across the world. They have different philosophies and different relationships with traditional finance institutions and governments. They will both suit a particular niche more than the other, but the vast majority of users will use both interchangeably. Unfortunately for Cardano, the particular niche that Algorand serves happens to be central banks and governments, which have far more money going through them than any other niche. It's important to note though that it's hard to say how much traffic from these institutions will translate to demand for the Algo coin. Cardano is ahead in terms of ecosystem development, and it's a truly unique blockchain thanks to the implementation of the EUTXO transaction model. Ultimately though, at this stage, I see Algorand being the better investment option simply because of the difference in market cap, with Algorand being around $2.5 billion and Cardano seeing around $15 billion at the time of recording. A little growth in Algorand will go a lot further than it will in Cardano. Ultimately, I will continue to invest in both, as they're both going to see tremendous growth into the $500 billion plus market cap territory, which will be at least 20x for both at the time of recording. It's also always wise to hedge your bets, so why bet on one when you can bet on both? If you want to see an investment I think is better than both of these, I suggest clicking on the video showing on your screen right now. Keep in mind, I made this video for research purposes and to aid you in your decision making, but not provide any actual advice. Everything I say is just an opinion and it should be treated that way. Other than that, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.